皆さん、こんにちは。私はジェイクです。先日、家族と一緒に日本旅行に行きました。今日は私が学んだことについて話しましょう。What's up, everybody? It's Skritter Jake. That was Japanese, I think. And I recently went to Japan with my family. We had an absolute blast, and today I want to record a video recapping my travels in Japan. Now, this is not going to be a travel vlog. This is not going to be pictures of me. Maybe we'll have some in the B-roll, but more, I just want to talk about some of the apps and things that I found super helpful while I was there, some of the language prep that I did and how that worked for me, and a couple interesting aha moments and takeaways that I had, both just as a beginner of the language, but also as someone who has spent over a decade learning Mandarin, right? I kind of know Kanji. And what does that mean, right? I'm a beginner in Japanese, but I can understand the Kanji sometimes. And what is that superpower like? Okay, so a little bit of setup and context. For me and for my family, this was a bucket list item. It is something that I have wanted to do for a while. Quite frankly, I wanted to learn Japanese before I even started learning Chinese over a decade ago at this point. I grew up watching Saturday morning cartoons, right? So anime and Japanese pop culture were a part of my world. I am a huge fan of Initial D. I love JDM cars. I enjoy a lot of JDM culture, but I have never been. This year, my family and I had an opportunity to do that, and we got a little bit of a dose of everything. We got some Pokemon, we got some tourism, we got some traditional Japanese culture. We went to Tokyo, we went to Kyoto, we went to Hakone, and we jammed a ton of stuff into our week. First things first, let's get into the apps and tips that I found super helpful when I was traveling around Japan. We used light rail, we used Shinkansen, we used buses, and one of the ways that was super easy and helpful was the Suica. So that's a card that you can get. You can get them in Japan, I believe, but for me, the easiest thing was honestly just to use my phone. I installed the Suica directly to my Apple Wallet. It allowed me to just quickly scan and get in when I was using the bus. Setup was easy. Adding money was easy. We could go almost anywhere, wherever we wanted, and it was super low friction. We did have to load up our kids' cards every now and again because we wanted to get that discount for children. But generally speaking, as a digital traveler who has a phone, check and see if you can put a Suica directly on your Apple Wallet. Another thing that was super helpful for us was Google Maps. It was great for navigating the Shinkansen and figuring out where we had to go to the station, where we had to transfer. When we were using the subways, it would tell us what exit we wanted to go out of. When we were trying to go to Akihabara and some of these other places, we did tons and tons of walking along the way. And every now and again, honestly, we needed a break. Our feet needed a break. We just wanted to chill out and relax and take in some of the sights. But it was very helpful to have Google Maps with me and have, data and internet so that I could access that. So another thing that was super helpful for me was Google Translate and ChatGPT or other kind of AI agents. You heard my intro. You know my Japanese level. Watashi wa Jake desu. There were so many things that I didn't know how to say or what to express. But I didn't let that stop me in my desire to communicate with other people in Japanese as much as possible. When we ran into problems, when there was a translation issue or there was a misunderstanding, it was really easy to pull out my Google Translate and use my phone and basically say what I wanted to say and have it go out in Japanese so that the person that was communicating with me could either hear what I was saying or read what I was saying. And, it's not perfect, but it was definitely good enough to get us out of some situations that we might have really, really, really struggled with, or quite frankly, just given up on, had we not had some way to have, an interpreter along the way. So the other thing that I found super helpful and just something to be aware of if you're traveling is just early bookings and preparing in advance for certain things. For us in particular, we went to the Pokemon Cafe. That required a reservation. We had to get a reservation. I think bookings open up like a month in advance, and we got up at like 2 a.m. to try and make that happen because of the time difference. But knowing those things and preparing in advance is super helpful. Same for something like Shinkansen. I think if you don't care where you're sitting, it's pretty easy to just go to a train station and get your Shinkansen tickets. But if you're particular about what side of the train you want to sit on, or you want your family to be together, or you want your oversized luggage to be with you, then spend a little bit of time in advance to prepare for these things can be super helpful. For us, most of the things that we did require a reservation in advance, and that just meant kind of understanding when can we book tickets and how early in advance, and just trying to prepare accordingly. All right, so now let's talk about language prep and what worked well for me. I am a beginner of Japanese, as you all heard in the introduction, konnichiwa, but I did try and make it my goal to use as much Japanese as possible while I was there, and communicate. And there were a couple things that worked really well for me as someone who currently does not have a Japanese tutor, and I'm not using a quote-unquote traditional textbook along the way. So number one, I would say, is Paul Noble's Learn Japanese with Paul Noble audiobook. I got this thing on Audible. It's about 10, 11 hours long, and I give it a 10 out of 10. I think that Paul Noble's approach here to the audiobook file was amazing. He's like, don't look at the textbook. Don't worry too much about making mistakes. Follow along with my sentence structures as I build you up and give you confidence in some very common everyday scenarios, from checking into hotels to going to restaurants, basic ordering of food, what you might expect when you're engaging with someone, how to ask for the bill, how to, buy food or ask how much money something is, things of that nature. This is super high frequency stuff, especially for a tourist. I do think that he was a little bit heavy on like the drinking culture. I don't know when this was, written, and I would say that the target audience is probably someone that's like tourists or maybe doing some kind of business in Japan or something like that. I think a lot of the language in there is fairly easily adaptable to other things, but you just have to kind of be flexible in that regard in terms of like plugging in words that you probably need and looking them up along the way. But overall, it was a solid 10 hours. It was worth it. I was using the language that I learned a lot along the way, and I found it super helpful. So the other thing that I would say that I found super helpful, learning hiragana and katakana. Kanji was helpful. We'll get to that in a moment, but I think having a basic understanding of hiragana and katakana and how it works and how it's pronounced is incredibly important, just for being able to kind of have some awareness of what's going on and maybe stumbling your way through a menu if you can't read perfect Japanese and you don't want to be taking your phone out every single time. Fortunately for you, Skritter has these decks and they're 100% free to study. I would highly recommend taking some time to learn hiragana and katakana if you are interested in going to Japan. It's going to make your life a lot easier. You're going to be able to sound certain things out, and you're going to have a little bit more of an understanding of, pronunciations and things like that. It was a must for me, and I found using Skritter super easy approach to being able to knock these things out of the park while I was there. So another thing for me would be focused YouTube videos and high frequency vocabulary. And, this is going to be something that's very subjective for me based on my travels, but I found it super helpful. As I said before, I was going and crossing off a bucket list. I wanted to do Pokemon. I wanted to do some tourism. I wanted to do some more traditional Japanese culture, but I knew that there were certain things that I would probably engage myself in. I would be going to restaurants. I would be going to hotels. I would be going to Akihabara and Pokemon shops and asking them, sumimasen, showcase onegaishimasu, various kinds of examples, but I wanted to be doing card shopping. I wanted to go to konbini, and I wanted to understand what they were kind of asking me along the way. Do you need chopsticks with this? Or you want to put this in a bag? Hey, you're ordering something. Do you want to heat it up? Right? So those were the kinds of things that I anticipated that I would need to do. And that was where I focused a lot of my time and energy and effort. I didn't want to wait until I got to that chapter inside of a textbook. Instead, I went on YouTube. I watched some cool YouTube videos. I watched a handful of them. I took some of that language. I put it into Skritter. I studied it. I added sentences, and, it wasn't perfect. I stumbled my way through. I still had to open up my application and kind of, I got to remind myself of that because I'm not using it every single day and hearing it every single day. But I had the foundation of what I wanted, and then I started adding bits and context along the way after that. And I found that super helpful. So this is the area I think, like, if there's tips or tricks or language prep, what worked for you if you went to Japan, let us know in the comments below. But these were the things that I found super helpful. Okay, so next up, I want to talk to you all about my own personal perspective on learning Japanese as a Chinese learner, right? I know kanji, And really, I should say I know kanji because I do think that having Chinese as a background gives you a huge head start into one of the more difficult elements of learning Japanese, right? I have a background, English as a first language, going into Chinese, struggling with making characters stick, discovering Skritter, leveraging Skritter to go to grad school, and ultimately, put my energy and effort into making a career out of helping others learn Chinese and Japanese. It gave me a little bit of a head start in terms of kanji. But I don't think it's as easy as just saying, oh yeah, I understand Chinese, so I can just read something in Japanese. It's just not that easy. I think between the onyomi and the kunyomi, it was very difficult for me to just see something in the wild and produce the sound for it. It did make looking up characters, kanji, a lot easier for me. I didn't have to struggle and go into a dictionary and, or take out my Google Lens or do anything. Like, I generally knew the stroke order and understood it well enough that I could just go write it in really quickly, mostly on the Chinese side, using that kind of input, and then kind of add that to my queue or something very quickly. When I was, out doing touristy things and looking at signs, right, looking at menus, things like that, I did find that it was pretty helpful to have that knowledge. It gave me kind of a base level understanding of like, this is pretty much what it's about, but I don't have all the details. That's kind of how I would summarize it, right? It's like having, I wouldn't call it a superpower.
I know Kung Fu. Show me.
But it was super interesting to me, being able to see, where the kanji gets used, have kind of a rough understanding of like, oh yeah, the bathroom's over there, or, oh, this way to the bamboo forest. For instance, we were ordering breakfast one day. I was, stumbling my way through ordering in Kyoto, and I was turning to my family and I said like, oh, this has, bamboo shoots in it. Here I am like stumbling my way through ordering in Japanese. And this woman's like, well, why do you understand like that kanji? Of all the kanji that you could understand, like you're sitting here ordering in like, basic elementary Japanese. Why do you understand that? And I had to explain to her. And I did this several times over the course of my trip. Like, oh, I have a background in Chinese. They thought it was really cool. So I definitely got some brownie points for understanding kanji, but it wasn't a super unlock of like, yeah, I can just go around and understand everything everywhere. It was helpful for menus. It was helpful for, understanding some nuances, historical sites. I got to use some Chinese with tourists in Tokyo and Kyoto. So those elements were really fun. But otherwise it wasn't like, now suddenly this language is easy for me. The last thing that I thought was very interesting is some of the aha moments that I had or reminders that I had. It has been a minute since I have been a beginner of Chinese. It has been years and years and years. When I go into a situation where I have to speak Chinese, I am not spending a lot of time thinking about what I'm trying to say. My Chinese is not perfect, but I do not struggle to communicate in Chinese and understand, generally speaking, what other people are saying. But it was really nice to kind of be in that beginner perspective again. It was nice to challenge myself. It was nice to find ways to leverage context to fill in the blanks. It was a good kind of challenge. I enjoyed leveling up along the way every single day. I think one of my favorite moments, we were in Akihabara and we went to a super tiny sashimi restaurant. And it was like cash only, limited seating. And we went in there and we ordered. And I accidentally ordered 2 giant bottles of beer because I thought they were just draft glasses. And, maybe that liquid courage kind of helped me. But just eating with my family and hearing people, I started hearing people as they were leaving, saying something. And they were not saying arigatou gozaimasu to the chef. They were saying ochouso sama deshita. I am full from my meal. And I hope that I'm saying that correctly. But it was those small moments that I absolutely loved. And it was a really good reminder when we're kind of in this stage, we're in this beginner stage, this intermediate stage, this advanced stage as well. It just doesn't come up as often. But there is something to be learned everywhere if you look hard enough. And then ultimately it's trying to figure out, do I want to commit this to memory or not? Like, is this important at this stage? Because as a tourist in Japan, there's just so many things that I didn't know and didn't understand. And I don't have time and energy to learn it all. I'm there for a week. I want to have fun, but I want to learn a little Japanese along the way. It was just nice to be in that situation again and be like, I'm a beginner, but I'm going to figure this out and to be able to do it. Other than that, I would say that one of my favorite moments from my experience in Tokyo was going to a bar that was near my hotel late at night. It was a rock and roll bar. I had walked past it several times. I was pretty exhausted from jet lag the first 2 days. And I just told my family, like, hey, I want to go out and have a drink. So I did. I went to the bar and I sat down. I ordered myself a beer and sat there for a little while. And I was kind of bored. There were not a lot of people there. I did obviously not understand what was going on around me very much, but someone asked me where I was from, and I ended up having like an hour and a half long conversation with a older gentleman, a carpenter who had recently retired and become a grandpa, and we chatted about all sorts of different things. We talked about rock and roll. We talked about cars. We talked about guitars. We talked about our kids, or his kids and his grandkids. And we did all of it in Japanese. And it was absolutely amazing. I stumbled my way through. I made an idiot of myself. We laughed. We enjoyed our company. But I had a connection with someone using a language that I don't speak. And he had a connection with me using his own language and also a little bit of English. And it was just a refreshing breath of fresh air to be put in that perspective and to make that connection. And to remind myself a little bit, like, this is why we do it. This is why we learn, or at least for me, this is why I wanted to learn Chinese in the first place, or Japanese, was to be able to make these kinds of connections with other people, right? It's not about going on the internet and saying, I know X number of words. It's not about showing up every single day and doing your flashcarding. It is not about saying, I spent one year and now I'm fluent in whatever. Like, you can spend time and energy looking at others and what they've accomplished and let that get to you. Or you can put yourself in situations where you can dive a little bit deeper into the culture, make some of those connections and have those moments with others and truly communicate to the best of your ability at the level that you're at the time. Probably brighten up somebody's day. And brighten up your own day along the way. I didn't need to be perfect in Japanese. I didn't need to understand everything that they were saying. I did need to drink a little bit of whiskey to get that courage going.
For relaxing times, make it Suntory time.
However, it was just such a nice moment, a reminder of why we go abroad and why we travel and why we connect with people and why we learn languages in the first place. I hope that some of these tips and tricks were helpful. Thank you so much for watching. 谢谢大家。ありがとうございます。Peace.